This unit discusses the need for the project manager to understand the environment within which the project will be conducted. This topic is addressed in the PMBOK guide in Chapter 2. You will also see environmental factors as an input to the integration management processes and most of the planning processes. There are a number of these factors. You must become familiar with them as you gain experience working in a new organization. This can be a source of frustration to the employee who changes jobs and loses the feeling of confidence that they know how to get things done in the new job. This is the first half of the list of enterprise environmental factors that you will see as an input to many processes. Learn to recognize them as environmental factors and try to put them into the context of your own project experience. If you can do that, you will be able to remember them. This is the other half of the list of factors. Again, if you can identify things in your experience in past projects that you could categorize into the factors in the list, you should be able to master the list. So try to think of an example for each factor. We will look at each of these in more detail. As suggested, you consider this in relation to each of the stakeholders that you have identified. This also means that these factors may change over the life of the project if the stakeholder list changes, which is certainly possible. It may make sense to talk to others who have worked with these stakeholders before to gain some insight into the areas listed. Drawing on the experience and wisdom of your coworkers and team will add a lot to this process. Culture is a broad topic. The three statements here are example definitions for culture. Organizations develop cultures in addition to the societal cultures that the stakeholders may have experienced. All sources of culture are factors for projects. Culture starts developing for each of us from day one of our life and expands outward with exposure to broader and broader groups of cultural influences. Read the pyramid from the bottom up. So this is a complex topic and virtually impossible to completely identify for each stakeholder. Nevertheless, to the extent we succeed in identifying cultural factors, they will help us to deal with the people the project touches. You will eventually learn the culture of the organization as you work on multiple projects, but for the near term you must rely on others. The easiest to obtain is the experience of your team in dealing with organizational issues, provided your team has the right organizational experience. If it is a contract team, this is not going to work in your favor on this topic. If you can identify an experienced lieutenant in your team that you can rely on, this approach often works well. Project management offices are put into place to help organizations be effective in doing projects, so they will address organizational culture in their work. The processes and procedures that they develop can build in provisions related to the culture. Methodologies are a tremendous asset in putting together a winning plan for the project, partly because of this factor. A methodology is how things are supposed to work. The geographical environment of the project can have a major effect on the project, as it means that multiple cultures will play a role. Many different legal jurisdictions may have a say in the project. Different countries have different holidays and therefore different working days, which affects the schedule for the project. Movement of people and goods between countries becomes more complicated. Different political and legal systems are in control in different project locations. Time differences affect the ability of the team to work together. The dispersion of project resources will involve travel costs and times. All of these come into play when we do an international project. These impacts need to be taken into account when we do our project planning. If this expertise is not in the project manager's tool set, then it is necessary to acquire it in the other team members. These factors affect global projects and require knowledge and skill that the project manager may not be able to provide. In this sort of project, we see teams that are made up of members that come from various countries involved, so that local expertise is available. One example of this is the hiring of local agents to deal with some of these issues in ways appropriate to local requirements. Over time, the project manager gains experience and can come to deal with the issues themselves, which increases their value to their stakeholders. Many countries have legal requirements on international projects, most notably the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act in the U.S. This law is intended to prevent the use of bribery in obtaining or keeping business in foreign environments. Even though the U.S. might not have jurisdiction in that foreign country, the U.S. citizen is held to the terms of this statute. This places an additional ethical constraint on the project manager to assure that project practices do not violate the law. Now the U.S. also has the Sarbanes-Oxley Act to further define accountability for the executives of public corporations. This law places additional responsibility on executives to exercise proper governance and oversight of projects. Note that all of this is about dealing openly and honestly with others and should be the normal behavior for project managers under PMI's ethical standards in any case, regardless of these laws. When moving materials, supplies, or equipment, there are some less well-known issues that come up. An easy example to understand is the restrictions on the import or export of certain technologies. This may become a factor if your project uses high technology in some way. Again, this should be taken into account during planning. The world becomes daily more conscious of the impact we have on the environment that supports our lives. One of the consequences of globalization has been an increased global awareness of the interconnectedness of human activities. Some think this may have been driven home to the bulk of humanity through the pictures of the planet Earth from space. It really doesn't look very big from, say, the moon. These environmental factors for projects drive us to think systemically about the project and all its dimensions. This will impact project selection as well as planning. Next up is a multi-unit topic, including the interpersonal skill sets.